Before we start to modify the menu, we need icons. They are prepared and attached to the project. Icons are divided into relevant directories, so I can simply copy them and paste into the project. Thanks to this, we have, for instance, icons named ICActionNew and ICActionRefresh, which will be useful to us. Once we have the right graphics, we can create actions in the action bar. They are defined in the menu category. When generating, each activity gets the relevant file which has its actions. As a default, a single action settings action is generated, which we can delete and replace with our own. We are in to-do list XML because it's the file generated for our activity with the list. Here we can add the elements we've chosen. The elements are created by adding an item. Each of them needs a number of things. The first one is an ID, like in the case of buttons. It's needed to recognize which element has been pressed. In the case of actions, IDs are named in a special way. According to the naming convention, they should be named action description. Another issue is the text, that is, the title which is supposed to be displayed. If it's an action which has to be displayed as an icon, the text will display if we press and hold the icon. Similarly to other elements, the text should be translated. Now another important thing, the graphics. We'll define them by defining the drawable of the icon variable. In our case, it will be ICActionNew. In order to display it as an icon, not as a menu item, we need to specify when it should be displayed as an action. We have the following possibilities of displaying actions: always, only when there is enough space in the action bar, or never. When choosing the last option, the element will always be displayed as a menu value. If we use the always attribute, an icon appears. Additionally, the modes can be connected. For example, always can be connected with text using the pipe separator. As a result, if an action is displayed, it'll be displayed with the text as long as there is enough space. In our case, it will be always. There is also another thing which is optional, but is often very useful. Order in category is a number which specifies the position inside the given menu. It's the value based on which the elements are sorted. If we set a lower value, the element is placed at the top or at the beginning of the menu. We create the second element in a similar way. It'll be responsible for refreshing. we set its Show as Action to If Room. If there is no room for an icon, the option is hidden in the text menu. If we set Order to a number smaller than 100, the refresh option will be first. If it is a value bigger than 100, the option will still be in the menu. The last option which we add to the menu is Log Out. It will be used to log out the user to enable a login as another one. It will simultaneously move us back to the login screen. We want this option to be always displayed in the menu. That's why it's necessary to set the title. We won't use an icon because we'll never need it. We define Show as Action as Never and set Order in Category to 102. In the preview, we immediately see what our menu will look like. The values Refresh and Logout are hard-coded text, so we move them to Resources. If we want to change the name of the variable, we can use the Shift F6 shortcut, which allows us to substitute the name. Thanks to this, the change takes place in the source file and in all calls where the name was used. We already use a menu which should be handled. That's why we'll implement the logout method. The moment we click the logout option, our activity is closed, and the login activity is started. Handling the menu can be carried out by two methods. The first one is on Create Options menu, inside the activity, whose task is to build a menu from the provided file. That's why we use Get Menu Inflator, whose task is to transform XML files into actual objects which are necessary and are later attached to the menu. This inflate prepares the menu elements and adds them to the already existing menu passed as a parameter. The second method is on Options Item Selected, which is called the moment any menu option is clicked. The clicked object is automatically passed here. Based on the ID of this element, we're able to recognize which element has been clicked. As Action Settings is no longer present, we can check whether the ID is not, by any chance, Action Logout. If so, we return True. This is important because this way we inform Android that the menu has been found and handled, so it will no longer browse other options. Additionally, we call the login. For this purpose, we create an intent which receives login activity. Given that we've logged out, we want our activity to stop existing. To do so, we call the finish method, which causes the activity to close. This corresponds roughly to pressing the back button on the device. At the same time, it's an asynchronous call, which means that it's not called exactly at this place. After calling finish, we're still able to call the start of another activity. Only after the method where in is finished, the finish method is executed. Thanks to this, we can finish the activity and start a new one later. We should do the same in the login activity to ensure that it cannot be returned to after the login. After a correct login, the user goes to the activity list, but if the user presses the back button, there should be no possibility of returning to login. The order of callings for finish and start activity doesn't matter in this case. After starting the application, we enter our login information. The first test is to click the back button after login. Underneath, there is no activity login. This means that the login activity implementation is correct. In the launcher, we see two icons belonging to our application. One of them starts the login activity, and the second one starts the activity of the logged in user. After expanding the menu and choosing the logout option, the first activity is displayed, which is correct. Another thing to do is to implement the plus button, which should cause a transition to the new activity. Again, first we'll implement the new activity, and then we handle the transition itself.